Hello, everybody. Welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV for another week, another huge week in SuperCoach. I think we've got one viewer at the moment, Dan, so hopefully they're paying close attention. We can give some real special tips. But no, the numbers are starting to tick up now, so chuck your questions below and we'll try and answer them over the next half hour or so. The Phantom has assured us he will be joining us soon, so we'll have his expert tips as well on how to survive the buys. Always a fun time in KFC SuperCoach, especially when we get some injuries and suspensions and things that always seem to happen at this time of year, but that's all part of the joy. Dan, welcome aboard. How are you going? And I guess the reason we really wanted to get you on, obviously we always want to hear what you have to say about KFC SuperCoach, but coming fresh off the mid-season draft last night was a very big deal for SuperCoaches because we are scratching around to find any cheapies who might play over the next few weeks so we can get into our teams, maybe bolster some numbers over the buys and free up some money so we can go shopping for target those buy players that we like to do over the next few weeks. Maybe not this week, but starting next week, players coming off their buy, ideal trade targets. But obviously you need some money to do that. So can you bring us some joy courtesy of the mid-season draft?
G'day, Al, and g'day, viewers and listeners. I mean, I can't bring you too much joy, unfortunately. The mid-season draft, as we know, in previous years has been, and this year it was proved the same that clubs are stockpiling on younger talent before the national draft, and that was the case with Ryan Marrick. I think he's a decent chance to play in the next month for the Eagles as a 193 centimetre forward. He's pretty nimble and got a long kick and had some decent numbers at VFL level in his 2 games. So he's probably the main one to watch in terms of a guy who could slot in immediately. But yeah, it was not too much joy. I mean, we saw Quinton Narkle and Caleb Poulter get second chances. Caleb Poulter did have the one score of 55 last year for the Pies, and Narkle has about 2 years of sub-affected scoring. So I think both of them would probably be a little bit too awkward in price anyway, even with Narkle's scoring potential. But yeah, there's a few other mature ages, but particularly for the Swans who are looking pretty decimated. They picked up 2 key position players who could slot in, in the back half of the year. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be any saviours besides potentially Geelong's pick up Mitch Hardy. It was a real surprise on the night. So just having a look at some of his scores so far this year, his first 3 games of the year, 189, 178, and 132 in the sample. He's a 185 centimetre midfielder. He wins on the inside and the outside. But we've seen before, big sample numbers don't always translate to big KFC SuperCoach scoring in AFL. So it's one to watch there, especially with...
that one out before the Phantom logs on.
yeah, that's it. But I mean, we've seen other sample players do really well. So, and considering Patrick Dangerfield has been out, he might be back this week. But Cam Guthrie is still working his way back from injury as well. And, their midfield could use a mature ager like him just to as a stopgap. But yeah, again, it's Geelong. So it's really unpredictable in terms of whether he could even bed down in midfield spot and even hold that.
They have had some success, though, the Cats, trying to find a silver lining here from some mature age pickups. Your Tom Atkins types that Stephen Wells
has Stewart, decent
yeah,
player.
Well, exactly. So they haven't been afraid to play some of those guys. So you never know. I mean, they, probably you wouldn't think they'd recruit him just to play in the VFL. So Mitch Hardy, there's a chance there. And yeah, if he comes in and he's that bargain 102K, that's just what we absolutely love. And maybe after the Cats buy, he could be an option for us. Yes, Geordie, of course, mentioning one of the all-time KFC SuperCoach greats. Podsy, I think he went from about 89 grand or something when rookies were in those days.
Oh, the good old days when they were 83K or whatever it was. Yeah, that was could use an 83K rookie right now, I think, Al.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Swans. So we talk about teams being decimated by injury and maybe need to plug some holes straight away. What can you tell us about Harry Arnold, who's a mature ager they got from, I think, Brisbane's VFL team?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a bit of a breakout campaign in the VFL. He's averaged 71 SuperCoach points along with 4.8 intercepts and 2.5 intercept marks. He is an athletic key back who obviously we've seen Callum Mills and Nick Blakey having to play as key position defenders for them in recent weeks. So he's one who they could look to immediately. They do have Lewis Melican just back, who's just quietly pumped out an 80 and he's 160K in his first game for the Swans this year. So he might be one to watch in the next couple of weeks, especially with them having their bye this week. He could play throughout the byes. But yeah, obviously Harry Arnold comes in at about 102K. So if he can come in, I'd probably be wanting to see at least 2 games from him first, but he could present as an option. They picked Jack Buller up with the last pick of the draft. I was really hoping the Tigers got him out. Really athletic key position forward. Goes into the ruck. A lot of his highlights him just grabbing it out of the ruck and booting it long forward and taking big contested marks. And he moves really well and can collect at ground level as well. So he wouldn't necessarily be that key position rookie who pumps up 40s. Yeah, I reckon he could have a decent scoring potential. And I think he might even, we have to wait to see how Achievement Data grades him position-wise, but he could be a forward ruck, which could be really valuable if he's 102K forward ruck. We're not just going for our Nick Madden 102K ruck. We could have another one potentially popping up. So, but the only thing is he did suffer a bit of a calf setback on the weekend, did manage 100 points, 100 KFC SuperCoach points in his last waffle game. But yeah, it does have a bit of an injury setback, which could delay his push to debut at the Swans.
And the other issue, of course, for him is he has to get past Lachlan McAndrew to get into that 22.
Our man. Yeah, I mean, obviously 43% time on ground. He's going to be tough to keep out of that side. But obviously he was our great forward rookie ruck hope a week or so ago when he started in the first 10 of bounce. But yeah, I think we're going to have to look elsewhere. And the 5,000 coaches who brought him in, I think you're probably expecting him to be dropped come round 13.
Yeah, well, if it's for one of these 102K mid-season draft guys, that would be all right, I reckon. And just quickly, you touched on the Tigers. Do we know much about Matt Coulthard was there? I think they had pick 4, and that was a bit of a shock. But, I mean, following Richmond over the years, they do tend to love picking a mature age small forward from somewhere with a late pick or a rookie pick. Or I think they got Liam Baker from WA when in the rookie draft. No one knew who he was. And even Matt Parker in the mid-season draft a couple of years ago, and then they played him for the second half of that year. So it wouldn't shock me if he gets a run at some stage, just because Richmond at the moment, I think that's a position that they're sort of really struggling in. Really missing Jason Castagna, as it turns out. Who would have thought? But do you know much about him at all? Probably not someone who's going to score us a heap of SuperCoach points.
Yeah, I mean, he's one who shocked everyone on the night, really. He'd played 2 sample games this season, hadn't kicked a goal, and then on the weekend kicked 4 miraculous goals for Glenelg, and next thing you know, he's on an AFL list. So, I mean, it's certainly a possibility. Richmond, obviously, they've done this aggressively in the past with the mid-season draft. Marlon Pickett, obviously the main one there, even though he'd suffered an injury, they still picked him up. He ended up playing in that famous grand final. So, yeah, I think that it might be a possibility, but it's probably more unlikely than likely that he makes a stamp in KFC SuperCoach terms. Obviously, a small forward, but he was playing sample reserves even about a month or 2 ago. So, wow. Yeah, I wouldn't be expecting him to make an immediate rise, but we've seen this before with the mid-season draft where players from relative obscurity have just continued to rise, and their performances have remained regardless of the levels. So he's certainly got some tricks.
Yeah, so fingers crossed on him and all those other guys. And we'll keep an eye. I just had a quick look in the site, and the players haven't been loaded in there yet, but they will be any time. So we will find out exactly how much they cost and what positions we've got them in. And then I guess it all comes down to teams, and hopefully 1 or 2 of them get selected. So Ben's asked the question, does it matter if, you want to wait to see them play 2 games? And ideally that is true. But just over the buys, some of these rules, we tend to be a bit more flexible.
Ryan Gardner from a couple of years ago.
And yeah, if Sydney picked Arnold in round 13, I think there'd be a big temptation to just pick him straight away, free up a heap of money, have a 102K guy who will play, and then you just fingers crossed that he stays in the team. And then that opens the door for you to then go and make the other buy moves, because that's the issue that I think I'm going to be facing. I've got a great plan drawn up, which, Tim put his out on social media, and I think it's a really good idea. If you map it all out, what are you going to do this week, and then what do you think you'll do next week, and then what do your numbers look like for round 14, 15, and how are you going to try and navigate through? You sort of need a 4 or 5 week plan, and then hopefully by the end you've got a finished team coming out of the buys and some trades left is in an ideal world. But yeah, I've got a list of players I want to target coming off their buy, like Lachie Neale, classic example. Next week he'll be free of his buy. But the issue is, where am I going to get the money to pay for these guys? Because I don't have a heap of rookies left that are worth much, and we need some rookies to be able to downgrade to. So that's going to be a key part of the equation, and some of these mid-season draft guys might be able to help us out there. But I mean, what are you looking quickly at doing this week, Dan? We've got Eddie Ford's clearly the number one trade option out there, and I certainly will be bringing him in. And it's just a question of, do I bring him in for one of my many dead rookies on the bench to at least get some a live body there and try and get some cash moving on my bench, or do I cash in a player like Seamus Mitchell early, because at least then that gives me 150 grand on the deal, which I can then go and spend. So that might all come down to teams and how many numbers I have. If I've only got 16 or 17, which is possible, I probably can't afford to be trading out someone who's actually playing. But what are you thinking? And I probably a very easy answer to the question of if you're getting Eddie Ford this week.
Yeah, I think I'm doing the same thing as you in terms of who to trade out, waiting for teams to drop at 6.20 tonight. But yeah, definitely jumping on the Eddie Ford cash train. I was a little bit cautious last week because he averaged about 30 or 40 in his previous 10 games at AFL level. But I really liked him coming through the under-18 system as a small forward. But he seems to be really pushing up the ground a bit more, playing on the wing, and he has some good skills, and he has been using it really well. Didn't record a clanger, as the Phantom wrote in his burning questions this week. So it was really impressive against the Pies. So, about 80 from 16 disposals. So he's an absolute lock to bring in this week. I'm also going to jump on the Kieran Briggs train as well. Works for my buys because I have Max Gawn, who's around 14 buys. So I'll be able to field two rucks each week besides round 13, where I'll just field Gawn and Marshall. But yeah, I like his matchups coming up with Nane Curvis, who conceded a ton to Lysette last week. And then he's got Goldie, who obviously smashed Teakle down there in Tassie. But there's a likely to be plenty of stoppages, which should work into Briggs' favour and hopefully get him to a score of 80 to 100. So, and then he's got potentially, if Darcy isn't back, he's up against Luke Jackson from the Dockers. So I think it's a good 3-run stretch where he could potentially make 100, 150K in really quick time, almost like a bit of a stepping stone rookie. It sort of has been the story of 2023, really. We've got these guys like Bailey Humphrey, Kieran Briggs, these 250K sort of rookies or 200K plus who are, making us some good cash. But yeah, I think in terms of who to trade out, I think it's probably going to be 2 of Atkins, Sam Simpson, Jacob Van Ruin, and Matt Roberts, depending who is playing or not. If Simpson and Atkins are playing, then I might decide to trade out Roberts and Jacob Van Ruin because I'm not looking great for the round 14 bye, which Jacob's on.
So while we're just on Briggs, I'm going to bring him in as well. And for me, it's sort of an easy swap for Sean Darcy. So, I mean, that injury, obviously not ideal, losing a primo, especially when he went down reasonably early in the game and only scored sort of in the 30s. But there's a little bit of a silver lining there in that if Darcy was fit, then he wouldn't be playing this week anyway. There'd be one less player that I'd have, and I'm already battling this week to get 18 scoring players on field. But this allows me to trade in someone who is playing and hopefully he scored 100 in his first 2 games. So if he can keep scoring like that, then it'll be an interesting question in when the Giants bye comes around in round 15. Ideally, then you'd trade him up to maybe a Jared Witts or someone who's had their bye and move on that way. Probably my concern is that I can just see what I'll do is this will free up 300 grand. I'll spend that next week, and then in round 15 I suddenly won't have any money to do anything with Briggs. But anyway, we'll worry about that when it happens. But you touched on there the issue that so for me he'll play all the way through the buys. I'll get those scores. With your ruck combination, you'll get him on field for a couple of games at least. There'll be some people out there who, especially if you have an English Rowan Marshall combination, which a lot of people do, that they might get Briggs on this week and then he'll their rucks will play for most of the buys, and he'll miss the same game, so he'll actually be stuck at R3. So you won't get that score during the bye rounds. But do you think there's a case to bring him in anyway, just to try and get that cash, because it is hard to find at the moment?
I definitely think so. And yeah, I mean, I looking at my bench, I'm starting to trade out most of my rookies with any cash at all. A lot of people are stuck with guys like Chesser, Constable, Harry Sharp, who knows if he's going to come back into the side. Nick Madden at R3 as well. I think that Briggs serves as a bit of an opportunity for those that are running a bit low on cash or are unsure how they're going to get the cash to get a full team, a bit of as a stepping stone rookie, regardless of obviously the on-field scores are a bonus if you can get them, but I think that the cash is just as valuable at this time of year. And if you've got Nick Madden, you can sub Briggs into your R3, have him for 3 weeks, then his buy is in round 15, and then you can, if he's up to 350, 400k, you can then hopefully it could be 50k or 70k or whatever it is to Darcy Cameron after that.
That's who I'm looking at.
Or probably more likely to be more closer to 100k with him starting to get some more ruck time. But yeah, and obviously he's a ruck forward as well. Or if you want another forward like a Zach Butters, if he's dropping in price, or a Jack McRae type, you could just swap Madden, use that ruck forward swing, trade Briggs straight to a forward like Jack McRae. So I think it opens up plenty of possibilities. And obviously the question mark is he going to play those 3 games? But I think on the evidence that we've seen and what Flynn, or the struggles that Flynn had in the first half of the year, I think you can be confident that he'll play at least 2. And I think if he performs as he has been, he'll keep on playing.
Yeah, he's looked good. Now, you touched on Jack McRae there, so this is another interesting question this week. The latest round of dual position changes came out, and there was about 15 players on the list, and Jack McRae clearly the most interesting from a KFC SuperCoach point of view. Max Gorman was the other one we were hoping for. Some people may have gone a little early on him, thinking he was going to get DPP, and it didn't quite happen. Missed out by 0.1%. But with McRae now available as a forward, he's about 570k, I think, with a break even in the 40s. So there's another question: do you bring in primos this week? And generally, you probably wouldn't, because we know they're going to have the bye in the next week or 2. But is McRae an exception to that rule? One of the all-time great SuperCoach scorers for the last 5 or 6 years. Now we can stick him in our forward lines. Is that a no-brainer, or is it a bit of a concern given, we know Bevo loves to spin the magnets? He's been playing off half forward and on a wing, and it's a bit hard to predict what his scoring is going to be like.
I think it definitely is a little bit of a concern, but he has a break even of 40, and here he is. Phantom is here. But yeah, a break even of 40. And I think that even with Treloar back, he's probably going to be a top 6 forward, or could even be the number 1 scoring forward from here. So yeah, or maybe the second best behind Tim Taranto. So yeah, I think that if you want to make it a play for ranks, or have a league matchup that you really want to win this week, I think Jack McRae's a pretty good play. He also has, I think, North Melbourne next week, so another favourable matchup ahead of his bye, which is in round 15. So yeah, I think that it's a good play. You could jump on him before he gets up to a price like 620k or something like that. But yeah, obviously his scoring was a bit less when Treloar was in there, but who knows if he's been performing so well the last couple of weeks with Treloar out of there. So maybe Bevo just sticks to what he's done in the last couple of weeks, and Treloar plays off half forward a bit more.
Yeah, I guess the warning sign, just for people to bear in mind, is that round 15 bye, because I played around with a version of my trades this week where I brought McRae in, and then I checked, what does my team look like in round 15, and it was not good. I had about 12 players available or something, so yeah, probably can't afford to bring him in. But welcoming the Phantom, have we got the connection to the lair over there? You might have missed, Dan had a bit of a swipe at the quality of Sample SuperCoach numbers, how much we can trust
Billy Frampton. I'm just thinking a couple of years ago when he averaged 120 odd and then came into the AFL and scored 40.
That was particularly in regards to talking about some of the mid-season draftees and Mitch Hardy at the new Cats recruits. I don't know if you can shed any light on him, Phantom, but welcome aboard, and maybe some thoughts on McRae as well.
They might have to change the name to the Sandful mid-season draft. All the big names, all the ones that have worked out, at least in the past couple of years. Most of them have been from the Sandful over here. So a great comp we know, but all's well in the city of churches. New South Wales lost the Origin last night. We always love to see that. And Rory Laird got off. I'm sure you've mentioned already, but despite
we haven't actually.
We
despite the
haven't
work,
brought it up. But
had a lot to go up against. Obviously, the tribunal, Brisbane, Lachie Neale himself, and then of course Tim Mitchell and the Twitter detective agency as well. Couldn't let him go. So good to see Rory Laird, 22 non-dangerous tackles coming up in Darwin, I think.
We'd love to see that. What do you know much about Mitch Hardy? Have you got down to see him in action?
I haven't seen a lot of him. Wins plenty of footy, pretty smart as well going forward in terms of high score involvement, score assists numbers. So his scoreboard impact is high as well for a midfielder, so which is always good in KFC SuperCoach. Mature body, and just hopefully some of those guys can crack in. But as we've seen in the past, it all looks good on paper when they come in, but like Dan Batten said, sometimes it doesn't always work out. So fingers crossed, but we'll have to wait and see first.
Well, at least we know that gives us some good intel, though, that if he does get picked by the Cats, then he's someone we can definitely look at.
Yep.
And your thoughts quickly, Phantom, on Jack McRae. A couple of questions about him. Are you bringing him in this week?
I'd like to. I just can't get there. And I think, as Dan mentioned before, the round 15 bye hurts him. I'm not as worried as such, sort of Adam Treloar. I agree with what Dan said too, with he's still going to be a top 4 or 5 forward at the worst, you'd think, from this point onwards. And he's shown, Jack McRae, this year as well. He's adjusted to moving around and playing in different roles and still scoring well. Sort of, I guess, last year and at times we've seen when he's been pushed out of the midfield, he struggled a bit. But I think he's sort of working out that we're seeing that doesn't really matter anymore for Jack McRae. Maybe not going to average 120 like he did as a pure midfielder, but still can put up big numbers playing anywhere Bevo puts him. So can't get him this week. I know it's going to be hard to get him after that, but just around 15 bye hurts. So maybe something might pop up in the run home.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Adrian here saying, got 22 playing this week. What? Can I borrow a couple of those, please? Maybe, I don't know, maybe he's going to struggle in those the other bye rounds, I think. But if you've got 22 this week, I don't think you'd have to trade. You'd probably bring in Eddie Ford, I think, and even Briggs potentially just for that cash generation. But you're certainly in a much better position than me. So well done, Adrian. But it's all, as we like to say, you sort of judge yourself on the buys over the whole 4 weeks this year, rather than just on the 1 week, because you might cop it really bad in 1 week, but be better positioned in one of the others. So don't get too carried away, I think, if you have a great week this week or if you go badly on the other side of the coin. But still, wouldn't be complaining if I was in that situation. We've got another question from Ben about Jordan Ridley. I nearly called him Todd Ridley. He hasn't been around for a while. Who has, I'll have to look up his price, but he's down in the 400K range, isn't he, for someone who has scored 120s the last couple of rounds. He was a bit frustrated. People picked him early in the year, sort of more scoring 80s and 90s, but at that price, is that something we should definitely be considering? And he's another one that maybe this week you have to do it because his break-even's -5. So if you want him that cheap, you have to move now. But Dan, would you consider Ridley this week?
Yeah, I think so. But at the same time, like a bit of a cautionary tale, like obviously a lot of us, I think Phantom did as well, jumped on Will Day at 450. And I'm regretting that move 4 weeks on and looking to potentially trade him ahead of round 14 if I have enough trades. So I think you only pick him if you think he can continue scoring in this role. He seems to be playing further up the ground and the last couple of weeks, which is promising. Obviously, Jaden Laverty back helps his cause as well. He's playing less key back, but there's always, the possibility that he does play a bit of a lockdown role against a side with taller key, with more key forwards. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great price. And I don't think you necessarily need the top 8 in every single position at this stage of the year. You probably are just looking for a bit of value, looking for 22 premiums or pseudo premiums to fill out your team. So, but again, I'd be looking at your round 15 just to see how you're tracking for that. But if you actually, no, I think are they round 14 or round 15?
14, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 14 rather. Yeah. So if you're going okay for round 14, then I think he's a a pretty decent option. But yeah, obviously there's an element of risk, and there's a reason why. Obviously, he had the injury-affected score, but even before that, he wasn't travelling too well either.
Good points from Dan. One I'm looking at closely because of the value. You know, say if Seamus Mitchell, who hasn't appeared on the Hawthorn injury list but did go down late last week, you say if he doesn't play, I can turn him into Jordan Ridley for 129k. The original plan was saving the money for your Lockie Neals, Jack Steele types, which I will eventually hopefully get to, but only spending 129k on the upgrade then allows me to get the next one quicker. And some KFC SuperCoaches out there might allow them to do another upgrade at all. If they were going to spend 250, 300k to upgrade Alex Chincotta or Seamus Mitchell to Lockie Neal in a couple of weeks, they might not have any money or trades to then make another upgrade until Callum Mills or LDU comes back at that price. So going Jordan really allows me some more flexibility over the buys. So if Mitchell is out, which we don't expect him to be out, but if something comes up, I will make that move. Dan's right. Eagles are struggling. Richmond always give up plenty to opposition defenders, which is the last 2 weeks, 122 and 130 for Jordan Ridley. But again, he was great with the ball last week. 17 of his 18 kicks hit the target. So again, it could all be a few bumps again, like Dan mentioned, if he has to go play a bit more lockdown. But I think there still could be enough big scores to justify the price. So I think I'll go there if something pops up at selection tonight.
And they do have a great run home, the Bombers. They've got the Eagles again. They've got North this week, and they get to play them another second occasion on the run home as well. So that's sort of some ticks for Ridley. And like you said, like the cash is just going to be such a big question that it might allow you to trade a Matt Roberts to Eddie Ford and still trade in a primo in someone like Ridley, rather than having to lose an on-field rookie if you've even got really any of those guys left that are worth anything, which is, that's something I'm struggling with. So again, that buy is going to be a really tricky one. But I think if you can, find players down around that price range, then they're definitely players we should be looking at. Now, Elise has asked about someone who's gone down into the 400s as well, Patrick Cripps. Based on Eber's, I think Carlton City's all right, isn't he? He's not going to miss this week. They've got about 6 players out, but he should play. Be a big call to bring him in now after his past few games and the fact that he was a bit sore last week. But he's definitely at that price, someone to keep an eye on maybe after Carlton has their bye. If he's still under 500k, we know what he can do. But, obviously quite hasn't been this year at the same level as he was last year. Would he be on your radar at all, Dan?
Well, as someone who brought in Cripps last year in the second half of the year, I'd be pretty cautious. I mean, he tends to start season with a bang and then sort of tapers off a little bit. He's getting on a bit as well. He's looking banged up. Obviously, suffered a bit of a setback on the weekend. I'd be waiting at least a couple of weeks and seeing if he can drop any more. The one from the Blues that I'm watching pretty closely is Adam Sard. He had a ridiculous run. I think I actually tweeted saying that he averaged about 110 in his last 15 games or something, 17 games. And since then, he hasn't turned up. So I think I may have jinxed him. But yeah, he's one that I think obviously he had an injury-affected game. He's been tagged a couple of times. He was also subbed out on about 90 at three-quarter time against the Eagles in his return game. So he hasn't turned up in 6 matches in a row. I think he copped a little bit of attention on the weekend against the Swans too. So he's down to 460k, 120 break even. I think if the Blues are going to reignite their season, he might be one of the ones to do it. So if he's available, it's probably more after their bye, after round 15 at 450k. I think he presents some decent value if you're looking for that cheap defender.
Big if, Dan. I think on the Blues revitalising their season, but I think at least 475k is what KFC SuperCoach Plus is predicting Cripps to be after the bye, which you definitely have to wait until then to see what he's at. 83, 60, 87, 77 in his last 4. So our was pretty nice when he said wasn't quite at the level this year. He's been well below it for what we want as a premium KFC SuperCoach midfielder. So at least definitely wait until after the bye. But I'm with Dan. I'm worried about where he goes in a KFC SuperCoach sense from here. But 2 or 3 tons before the bye could change our mind.
How's this for a score? It's from a Carlton player. Last 4 games, 106, 111, 94, 135, 124. That's Sam Doherty, who I picked at the start of the year. That's kind of what I was expecting. Didn't happen early on, and then obviously got injured, and we had to trade him, I guess. But he's been pretty good. The problem with him is he's gone back up to, what is he now, 557K, and he's got a break even of 62. So he'll be over 600 by the time the Blues buy comes and goes, I think. So he's probably the ship has probably sailed, but it turns out he might have actually been a good pick after all.
And he was out for 4 to 6 weeks and came back in 2 weeks. So yeah, it seems like every single player that I have that's injured doesn't have that sort of recovery timeline, whereas every player I trade out has a miraculous recovery. And we've seen with Tom Stewart as well and others. And Max Gawn was back in about 3 weeks after his 5 to 8. So, yeah. But, yeah, it's certainly an interesting thought, I reckon, Al.
Yeah, I mean, on that subject, I noticed, Phantom, in your burning questions, you mentioned the possibility of holding Sean Darcy. Now, when he first got injured, apart from being really annoyed, I did sort of think to myself, well, he wasn't going to play next week anyway with the bye. Round 13, you've got only 2 teams missing, so I'd probably be fine then. Give him 2 or 3 weeks before I have to really worry about it. But then as the week's gone on and Kieran Briggs bobbed up, which I wasn't really expecting, I'm sort of thinking, well, that's my way to generate 300 grand that I can do some trades with, because otherwise it's going to be a struggle. But is holding Darcy an option, do you think, if he can survive the next couple of rounds?
I think so. I think if you need the cash in your situation and desperate for, I think it's an excuse to do that. But otherwise, I think it could be a hold. You might only miss him for that round 13 bye when there's only 2 clubs with the week off. Moderate grade is what the Dockers have said. And I think Dockers also said that Darcy had some holidays planned or a couple extra days before flying back to Perth last week after the game, but cancelled them, went back straight away and got stuck into his rehab. So they called him a serious pro on the club's website, which I guess mirrors a little bit of how Clayton Oliver attacks his recovery too. And we saw Darcy did a hammy a couple of years ago. I think it was against the Bulldogs in 2021, went down, finished the game off the ground with ice on and played the next week as well. So we know we talk about his durability, but he can put up with a lot, it seems, as well. Does get knocked around and still pushes through. So if you don't need the money, then I wouldn't be surprised if he's back there in round 14. So that makes it a hold, really, one week.
I might, see where I'm at round 15. I think it will get Briggs, but I might end up trying to get Darcy back in if his price comes down a bit. He could be the ruckman that I end up targeting for the run home. Before we get to some captaincy talk, Phantom, you jumped on a little bit late. We had some chat early on about Briggs and Eddie Ford. I think we're pretty universal saying get Eddie Ford. We didn't really mention George Wardlaw, though. What's your take on the rookies this week? I know some people have talked about doing a triple downgrade, using all 3 trades to just get some rookies in, bank a heap of cash, and then you can really go shopping next week. Do you think that's a viable option? Wardlaw's break even isn't that low, so he's not going to make a heap of money, but could be a way to free up some cash, and you think he's going to keep playing.
Yeah, that's the thing. All over forward, definitely. I'm sure you guys said that negative 114 makes it a must-have in this cash climate, I guess, borrowing some terminology from the KFC SuperCoach investor. But Wardlaw, we were raving about him this time last week, but obviously 1 tackle down from 9 on debut against the Pies, 66% game time, I guess, is the concern with the Roos easing their prize selection into it, given the injury interrupted start and off season. But was still a good part of the Kangaroos CBA mix on the weekend. Collingwood midfield, not an easy one to score against. He had some nice moments as well, especially late in that game. So again, not a must-have, which maybe we thought last week, and the price hurts as well. You're not going to make as much money on that trade. But again, if you're doing okay elsewhere, he's going to make more money than some of those guys on your bench, I think. You might not have a big injection like Ford this week, but wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and scores 70 on the weekend, and then it kickstarts from there. So if you need the cash or you want to generate the cash, and then maybe you think about turning Wardlaw into your last premium midfielder sort of around 16, 17, then I think that could work out.
Yeah, I think with Ford, people might have the option, and I think people will be trying to do this if they can, of bringing him in just keeping him for 3 weeks and then trading him out when the Kangaroos bye comes around, because it is round 15, as we've talked about, is going to be a tricky one. And you might have banked 150K in that time. Wardlaw's probably not going to do that, but maybe a bit more of a slow burn if you've got enough numbers in that bye to carry him through, and he could be a pretty handy bench cover for potentially the rest of the year. Or, like you said, maybe he's the one in round 16, 17, you turn him into a Callum Mills or somebody who's dirt cheap, and that finishes off your team. So, I don't hate him as an option, but I think of the two, definitely I would have Eddie Ford ahead. All right, so we need to talk captains. Very important, especially in a bye round. And it's Friday night, the footy is on, and your KFC Friday night feast is on its way. Score free delivery on your Friday night footy feast every Friday when ordering through the KFC app or kfc.com.au. It's game on Friday night, Blues v Demons. No Mark Pitney, no about half a dozen other Carlton players. Dan, Max Gawn, is he going to be your VC this week?
Well, when I'm tucking into my Zinger box, I'm certainly going to be weighing that up. Max Gawn, VC, up against Tom de Koning because of Mark Pitnett's hand injury. But I think it could be on the cards for me as a bit of a point of difference VC. But the last time I did it, when I brought him in, he went out and scored 70 up against Scott Lysette, who everyone would be dropping tons on. So he did look a bit better last week, though, but he still only scored the 99, even with Darcy out injured. So it might be too much of a risk, but I don't mind as a bit of a point of difference play.
And we should mention that during a bye round, of course, you've got all your players who are not available. They've got blue dots, and they don't lock out until the start of the last game of the round. So you could move them on and off the ground. You're probably not going to be worrying about that too much, but they're perfect for vice-captain loopholes. So chuck the vice-captaincy on someone who plays earlier in the round, and if it doesn't work out, you've got plenty of other choices. And if it does, they score really well, then just make one of your bye players, a Josh Dunkley or someone like that, captain, and you'll get your double VC score. So good chance for everyone to try the loophole if you haven't done it already. But who do you think, Phantom? There's a few interesting options around the comp this weekend.
There is. I think I might need a 30-piece feed on Friday night. No Clary Oliver and Carlton playing. Might need something to get me through that night. But Christian Petrarca, if you do have him out there, always a good VC option, given his ceiling, given the opponent, given Friday night footy. Zach Butters, I think if you've got him, Adelaide Oval, the first game on the Saturday afternoon is a good fee, again, given his ceiling. A couple I'll consider, though, Nick Dacos and Jordan De Goey in that clash on the Saturday afternoon against the Eagles as VC.
And Goey, yeah.
I do like Tim English under the roof at Marvel Stadium. I know Fancy Freako put out some stats this week. He doesn't tend to score that well against Geelong, but Kieran Briggs scored well last week against the Cats down at GMHBA. So back at Marvel, I don't mind him. All those three guys, though, ideally are VC options, but limited C options coming out the other end on the Sunday. Zach Merritt, if you got him on the Sunday afternoon, but I'll probably back in Tim English as C and go to Goey or Dacos as VC.
Yeah, I don't mind that. And we've got in the last game, if you need someone, Zach Merritt is an option for me against the Kangaroos. So there's a few options out there. Some of the timing of the games could be a little bit tricky with you've got the Bulldogs playing on Saturday night at the same time as the Crows and Gold Coast. So the Bont, always a safe captaincy. And then you've got Laird, who is playing. Yes, excellent, despite the best efforts of some. And obviously Dawson also in that game, who has a great record against Gold Coast. One little red flag I'll mention. On paper, looks like a reasonable matchup for, as you say, Zach Butters and Connor Rozee against the Hawks. But Hawthorn's actually been, obviously, they've been playing all right, getting a couple of wins, and they've been harder to score against than you might think. And looking at Rozee, when they played last year, he only scored 48. So hopefully that doesn't translate too much. But, maybe a little warning on him. What about this? Matt Rao loves the slop up in Darwin, the get down and dirty.
I have to pass it on to the hipster. Roy Laird, sorry, I'll just jump in then. I did forget about Roy Laird. If he's going to get 22 non-dangerous tackles, I'd better have him as C. I don't mind Matty Rao. Again, if you can VC him up there in those conditions, that'd be ideal. And back in a Merritt or Taranto on Sunday, I like.
Yeah, also, how about Jordan Dawson's last two scores against the Suns, 140 and 158 Obviously, a little bit different up there at TIO, and he has been burning a little bit, but still managed the 120 against the Lions, even though he had a few clangers towards the end. So, yeah, I actually don't mind him as a potential option, but he's probably more a VC as well. So it's going to be, I think it's going to separate, the good coaches from the bad this week. The captaincy option. One thing I've got to navigate as well, I'm actually heading on an international flight on the Saturday night. So I'm going to hopefully get my VC and Z done before that, so I don't stuff up anything. At least there's no loopholes. At least I'm not loopholes Mitchell this weekend with all the players out. So I won't have to worry about that too much.
Yeah, all right. Well, good luck with that. What about Rory Atkins? Sneaky chance up in the TIO. He loves it up there.
VC. Surely
to be the sub.
Surely he plays. I know they moved him around. Brandon Ellis's wing was where he played. The conditions don't suit, but hopefully Stewie keeps him in.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We better wrap it up there. I'm going to get booted out of this room in a second. So thanks, guys, for jumping on. Dan, enjoy the trip. We might, I don't know if you're going to be able to log on next week from Ho Chi Minh City or wherever you are, but we might be in a couple of weeks after the buys.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do SuperCoach TV on the overnight train. How about that?
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Don't rush back.
Half moon party or something over there, is it? What do they have that over there?
Full moon party?
Yeah, it's not that. Anyway, we'll get onto that after this. Thank you, fandom. Thanks everybody for watching. Good luck in the buys. Really be hanging out for team selection tonight. You never know, we might get a Chincotta or someone like that comes in and might save us, which would be very good for my team. So hopefully everyone can field 18 as a minimum, and we'll survive this week. And next week won't be so bad. We'll get a little breather and then launch ourselves into those last couple of weeks, which should be a lot of fun, shall we say. So thanks, Dan. Thanks, fandom. Thanks, everybody. Check out all the great content. SuperCoach Jury with all the experts talking about how they're going to challenge the buys, and Dan's assessment of those mid-season draftees. Hopefully we'll get a few of those next week that can save us as well. So good luck, everybody, and we'll catch you again soon.